The old woman looked at the charred remains of her house and sighed. Her neighbor, an old man with twinkling eyes, approached her and said, "Don't worry, Martha. I'll help you rebuild." Martha turned to him and asked, "Why do you want to help me? We barely know each other." The old man leaned closer and whispered something that made her blood run cold. Martha had always felt uneasy about her new neighbor. He was an old man who kept to himself, and his house was filled with an unnerving silence. All the townspeople knew him as Old Man Withers, but no one knew where he came from or anything about his past. The only time Shidi heard him speak was when he introduced himself after she moved in, and when he warned her about the woods behind their houses. "Stay away from the woods, Martha. They're dangerous," he'd said. His voice was raspy and dry like autumn leaves. But there was something in his eyes that made her shiver. It was an unsettling intensity that seemed to pierce through her. His words had intrigued her. Why were the woods dangerous? What was he hiding? Curiosity battled with common sense. She knew she should stay away, but the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. One afternoon, Martha found herself drawn to the woods. She should have listened to Old Man Withers' warning. From the moment she stepped into the forest, a sense of unease enveloped her. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out the sunlight. The air grew heavy, making it hard to breathe. Then she saw it, a clearing bathed in an unnatural light. In the center stood a dilapidated house. Its windows were vacant eyes staring back at her. An oppressive silence hung around the house, broken only by the sound of her own heartbeat. Fear pricked at her skin. She wanted to run, to escape the suffocating dread that seemed to emanate from the house. But her feet felt rooted to the spot. She cautiously approached the house. The whispers started. At first they were faint, like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. But as she drew closer, they grew louder, forming words that sent shivers down her spine. Get out, they hissed. Panic surged through her. She turned to flee, but the whispers followed her, growing louder, more insistent. Get out. You shouldn't be here. Leave now. Their words echoed in her ears, amplifying her fear. She stumbled through the underbrush, desperate to escape the clutches of the whispering voices. Suddenly, a twig snapped. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. A figure emerged from behind a tree, and Martha's heart pounded against her ribs. It was Old Man Withers. Relief washed over her. She wasn't alone anymore. But his face, usually creased with a kind smile, was now twisted in a terrifying snarl. His eyes, once twinkling with warmth, were now cold and menacing. You shouldn't be here, he rasped, his voice like gravel grinding. This place is not for the living. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Fear paralyzed her. Withers took a step closer, and she could see the glint of something sharp in his hand. You're trespassing on sacred ground, he hissed. Now I must punish you. Before she could react, he lunged. Martha awoke with a gasp, her heart hammering in her chest. The dream, if that's what it was, had been so real. The oppressive atmosphere of the woods, the whispers, the terrifying visage of Old Man Withers. Cold sweat clung to her skin, and she could still hear the echo of his voice in her ears. Trembling, she got out of bed and went to the window. The morning sun was streaming in, casting away the shadows of the night. But Martha couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The carefree birdsong sounded like mocking laughter. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets she didn't want to hear. Then she noticed something. Old Man Withers' house was gone. In its place was a small, neat cottage, newly constructed. And standing beside it, waving at her, was Old Man Withers. But his eyes, they still held that same unsettling intensity. Had it been a dream? Was Old Man Withers really a sinister presence lurking in her neighborhood? Or was she simply overreacting, reading too much into a harmless old man in his secluded house? Martha couldn't tell. But one thing she knew: she would never enter those woods again.